everybody. This is Dr. Neha Chaudhary, and I'm here with my teen co-host, Hazuri Dhillon. We have a phenomenal guest for you today on this episode of Being Me, and we can't wait to chat with them. Our entire team is so passionate about our mission to support teens and their mental health journeys. So we thought it'd be really wonderful if you got to know some of the people behind BeMe. So today, we're really honored to welcome our guest, the CEO of BeMe, Dr. Nicki Tessler, to Being Me. So here's a little bit about Dr. Nicki. She's a clinical psychologist with 20 years of experience in mental health care. Nicki's also a talented athlete who played high-level competitive soccer. She's the mother of two fabulous teenage daughters, Ruthie and Kate. And all of us on our team are just so lucky to work with her in her role as the CEO of Being Me. Do we miss anything, Nicki?
That I'm lucky to be working with you.
Oh, well, clearly there's a lot to talk about, so let's talk.
Hi, Nicki. Thank you for joining us on Being Me. One of the questions we always start off with is to ask our guests about their teenage self. So tell us a little bit about teenage Nicki. Were you shy? Were you nerdy, sporty? I don't know, anything about yourself?
So I was an athlete. I would say that most of my teenage years were spent playing soccer. So I very much stayed disciplined as a result of it. So I think as an adult looking back, I wasn't having as much fun as I hope teens have. And I was more achievement oriented versus gratified oriented. So I would say that sums up me as a sporty teenager.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned sports because I've noticed that there have been a lot of athletes like Michael Phelps, Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, just to name a few, who have been brave enough to stand up and talk about the toll that competing at that level takes on their mental health. When you hear them sharing their mental health journey, does any part of that resonate with your experience, either personally or from what you noticed about some of your teammates and the challenges that you're up against as an athlete? Because I imagine that it takes a lot of mental power just to kind of keep your head in the game.
I think sports was one of the greatest blessings. I always felt like I was given this God-given talent around soccer and so fortunate because it taught me leadership, it taught me teamwork, it taught me discipline, it taught me how to push yourself and find that grit and that hunger and hustle inside. At the same time, though, there was a lot of pressure and you faced rejection, you faced getting cut from teams. You faced not being as good as somebody next to you. And as a teenager, you know, looking at somebody else and going, they're better than me, and not being able to always focus on you is very trying, even for adults. So as a teen, that was something to overcome. So I always felt as an athlete, you have this public self that you're showing to the world, but it doesn't always match the internal world or what privately you're experiencing or struggling with. And I think sports is a good reminder that even though the public self is powerful and strong and very successful, it doesn't mean that there's not vulnerabilities or struggles inside that somebody's going through. So I think it was, trying to always kind of work through that through the years.
It's so important that you mention that because I imagine that's not specific to sports, right? I think most of us can relate to a time in our lives where we felt like what we were portraying to the world is different from what we were feeling. Like you said, there's that element of vulnerability, of also maybe comparison to others. And it's just such an ongoing problem or challenge in any aspect of life and at any age.
Yes, especially I think as a female, that false self that you feel sometimes that you're showing the world something, but are you really as great as people think you are? Or are you hitting those goals like everybody around you thinks you're thriving? And how do you manage or tolerate kind of those imperfections and getting at the end of the day, the acceptance of I'm me and that's the best it can be in terms of who you are.
How did you get there? What helped you get there?
So I went through a lot of therapy. I've been through a lot to work through myself, I think, especially kind of learning that being perfect can only not be the goal, but it's not something to even strive for. That push, I think I was driven more of feeling like I'm not good enough. So I wanted to keep pushing in ways and instead coming to love and accept all different parts of ourselves that maybe at times seemed like vulnerabilities, but really become those beautiful parts that actually make you who you are today. So I love the expression like broken glass when glued together is so much more beautiful than just a glass vase. And I think that's,
Love that.
Yeah.
Before we move on from sports, I wanted to ask you, did you have things that you do to mentally prepare before games? Because I wonder if there's anything to learn from sports and the mental preparation that it takes to perform or to ground yourself before performing that could be helpful for teens in general. I mean, it seems to me like some of those things might help even before, say, a big exam or public speaking or even having a tough conversation that you've been avoiding.
So I learned this more recently, and I do this with my girls, where you do the Wonder Woman pose and you stand very still and you put your arms on your hips and you feel your strength and you puff up and know that like, I've got this. No matter what I'm going after, I've got this. And it centers you in a way, and it's a fun little trick. And when I was younger, a lot of it was through music. I would pick music that would pump me up, would get me going and excite me that way. And that was always very helpful for me right before big games.
I love that. So music scientifically releases feel-good chemicals in your brain. So that one makes sense. And then the first one that you mentioned, the Wonder Woman stance, there's a science behind that too. I remember reading a study that if you have your arms on your hips and you pull your shoulders back and drop them down and take that really confident power stance, it actually reduces your stress and boosts your confidence in that moment.
What inspired you to get into the field of psychology? Was it a field that you were always interested in, or how did it become like the thing that you wanted to do?
So it is in my DNA, Hazuri. I mean, when I was little, I would go to the school assistant in my elementary school and I would ask her, what % happy are you? Every day. And I have to tell you, I had no idea what percentage meant. No, what I knew is that if the number was higher than the day before, she was having a better day. Throughout my life, it was something I always say, behavioral health found me. I didn't find behavioral health. And so I went on in 8th grade and I did my oratory speech for the school on childhood phobias. And everybody was telling me to do something different. Even in graduate school, even as CEO in a behavioral health hospital, people had tried to say, go to another field. How about this field? This medical service line is sexier than behavioral health. It's more profitable. And I have an unwavering commitment to behavioral health care. And it's been with me since, I'm telling you, a little girl.
That's really inspiring. There are countless reports of this country being in the middle of a teenage mental health crisis. Do you agree? And what do you think is needed to improve the situation?
I definitely think we're in the midst of a crisis. Now, I would tell you, I've always thought that we needed to focus and have the attention on teen mental health. And so for me, this is both a blessing and a curse. I don't like how COVID has accelerated and gone after the mental health of everybody. That said, this has been an issue, the lack of resources, times that things were misunderstood in terms of resources for youth, all of the different pain points that exist that really needed for the attention to finally be placed on such a worthy field like mental health care. So for me, I'm a bit torn because on the one hand, I hate how the rates have gone up, but in the same, I think it's been a big reveal because we've had those rates and it didn't have the notice warranted and deserved. And so today, I think it's an all hands on deck approach to go after this industry. And it finally has everybody looking and paying attention to it, which for me is well overdue.
That's so true. And I think it's definitely been a silver lining of the pandemic. You know, anytime you have a universal experience, it becomes really hard to ignore these things. And I think there's a shared thread throughout humanity in that we've all been impacted by this thing. And then experiences like mental health and the mental health crises can really come into the forefront, as sad as it is. Switching gears, we want to hear more about your personal life. What makes you you? What makes you Nicki? What are you into? What are you not? Let's start there.
So I'm nerd chic. That's how I refer to myself because I am a nerd. but I also like to believe I have a little bit of sophistication. My kids and everybody in my life would say I'm not the most fashionable, but I like to brand myself as nerd chic in terms of who I am. So most importantly, I'm a mother, two beautiful, wonderful daughters that are the best accomplishments of my life. And they're the loves of my life, Ruthie and Kate. Ruthie is 15 and Kate is 13. Mm-hmm. I am married to my wife, Joanna, and we just have a relationship for the storybooks. And our relationship is incredible. She's my best friend. She's my North Star. And I feel so fortunate that I have her to go through life together with. So we have this wonderful life in Miami. All of our family lives here. So I call it a bit of a tribe. I live a very blessed life full of a lot of love, for sure. What I don't do enough is exercise, which I try to do better, and eat healthier, which I'm starting to do better. And I need probably more hobbies. I think I'm better at the work side of the equation than the play.
Yeah.
And at my older age, I'm trying to learn play. And my daughters actually have been very good at showing that for me.
What would you pick up as a new hobby if you could?
I've started to get really into pickleball. Pickleball is like there's little rackets with, and it's a smaller tennis court and with a ball. So different rules, and it's much smaller. So it's like in between paddleball and tennis. It's a wonderful sport, and I've played a little bit here and there, and I really want to do more because it's a great outlook. You know, we talked about sports earlier. Yeah, outlets are critical, and it's fun. It's just fun.
Very cool. What would you say are your strengths and what are your quirks?
So my strengths are that I'm really good at keeping things private from other people. So when people tell me things, people have often referred to me as a vault. And I take that very personally, that people over and over have said, God, I could tell you anything. So I feel like a strength of mine is I'm very trustworthy and I care deeply about people. So that sensitivity or attachment to others is a real strength.
That definitely comes through.
I appreciate that. I really feel it in my bones. And this team is so easy to love that it's really probably more about all of you than it is about me. And in terms of the quirks, I can be demanding. I'm obsessional for sure. And that's a superpower of mine. And it's also probably, like you're saying, a quirk. So there's times where people will let things go, like a task at hand, and I will not. I'm like a dog with a bone. So I think being able to let things go and move on from a task or from, something I'm working on is something that, I still struggle with.
Thanks for sharing that.
We'd love for you to share a little bit about BeMe. Why BeMe? How will you ensure that BeMe keeps the voice of teens in mind when you're building the app and the BeMe community?
Well, Hazuri, you're going to have to help me with that, right? My whole hope is that the teen advisory board keeps me honest. So when I think about how will we get BeMe to be successful, it's going to require a team of teams, and together, this is our company. It's your company, Hazuri. It's Neha's company. It's Derek's company. It's my company. It's everybody on that advisory board's company. So it's going to take all of us together really making it win. And what I think will get us there is that the heart and the passion, there is a conviction that is just unflappable in the team about having us go after a new direction for behavioral health care because we feel, Hazuri, that you are the coolest generation. And I love teens. You stand for things in a way I never had the courage to. And so I have great admiration and adoration as well. So you guys serve as my inspiration. And so when the days are hard, which they are, and when there's times, there's this eye on the prize of really being a part of being a helping hand to allowing you guys to have the lives you deserve by creating a support system that really fits for those that think natively digital. And that's really care focused so that we can help you guys be unleashed those greatest versions of yourselves.
That's really great to hear. As the CEO of BeMe, can you tell us a little bit about what you do on a daily basis and what it's like to run a company?
Sure. It sounds like I know all about everything I'm doing all day, right? A piece of cake, Hazuri. But candidly, every day looks a little bit different. Being in a startup and leading a company, I'd say most importantly, I go to sleep thinking about making sure the people, our team's well-being is good. I think about that more than anything. So the culture that we're building is where my mind is top of mind for me. And also the talent manager. I think having been on the teen advisory board and being exposed to the team members, there's a depth of talent and talent density that I'm so humbled to be a part of. So I feel like I sit there going, okay, how am I the best talent manager I can be so that these stars that are around me, I can help them be and do what they can do. So in addition to that, because that people focus I think the greatest people brand, and then is managing kind of operations. So you think about, I have to look at the finances, see how our budget is doing. I have to think, are there certain policies and procedures? As you know, all that security and privacy, we've got to make sure from a legal perspective, we have it taken care of. Then I have to see how our clinical model is being built and our product model. How's that going? How is the teen advisory thriving? And some of the other advisories. So I work a lot with the board and our investors to make sure we're thinking about how do we execute, but also how do we manage the vision so that as much as I get focused on what's in front of my face, I also keep an eye out for tomorrow. Because there's a lot of milestones that we need to hit, whether it's finance, whether it's quality, whether it's clinical and product. So all those deliverables get met so that we continue to thrive as a company.
I wanted to ask you, do you have a morning routine? How do you start your day? Do you feel like it has an impact on your mental health or your focus throughout the day, just kind of getting all of this done?
I've always wanted to be one of those people that says, okay, I get up at 4 a.m, I go for a long run, I eat a green smoothie, and then I meditate, and then I start my day after having spent 30 minutes rearing up.
The dream.
That's the dream. I honestly do not have a morning routine. There are some days I take my girls to school, and then there are other days where I might put on Morning Joe and watch a little bit of news before I come and start to get into work. And so one of the things I've got to work on is I tend to look at my phone too quickly in the morning. And somebody recently said, Nicki, look at your face in the mirror first before you look at the phone. I want the mirror to be the first, And then so I'm trying to work on that because I think there's a healthier way in the morning for the routine. So my routine still leaves a lot to be desired, if you can't tell.
But still, it sounds like you take time to do something that's not work related. And I think whether you're working, whether you're in school, it's a good lesson or a good kind of model to have to try to start your morning doing something else, something kind of nurturing, something for yourself that kind of keeps you focused, that starts your day off without an influx of information or to-dos or something that you're going to stress over. I've had the opportunity to work with the Teen Advisory Board, and we've had the pleasure of interviewing a group of them on our podcast on our last episode. And they're a really, really impressive group of young people. What's one of the things that you've learned from the Teen Advisory Board so far?
I've learned how much I don't know from them. So I think that I went into this saying, I know I have a lot to learn about teen mental health from teens, but the more I have the connections and the more interface we have, the more I realize just how much I need and rely on them to make this company successful. So people might think it's trite when I say they are centered to this company and key to the decisions, but I very much mean it. And I think every time I talk to them, that gets amplified. And so I think while I knew the role they were going to play, this is off the charts in terms of how much we need to listen and really understand what their needs are and how to effectuate them so that we can be successful for them and with them, more importantly.
The Teen Advisory Board, we asked them if they had any questions for you. And some of the questions we got were, what was your inspiration for BeMe? And when did you start working on BeMe, and how did you go about starting?
So I was asked by Ron and Scott. So Scott is the founder of BeMe and Ron is the board chair for BeMe to come on board to be the CEO. And what inspired me was that I feel like we're really insignificant in this world as people. I look at the ocean and I look at the mountains and I think we're really small compared to everything. But when we come together for something bigger than ourselves, it's just magical. I mean, it just gives me goosebumps. I mean, the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And so as I was learning about this platform, I started to think about, wow, can you imagine if we were able to play a small part in really the future of teen behavioral health care? And I couldn't think of something that inspired more hope for me than the idea that I could make a small contribution to the teens of this world, because I really mean it when I say you guys are the coolest generation. And I feel we owe it to you. I think we failed in some ways, really showing what empathy can look like, really showing what the world can be when we come together. And so if we can design or redesign mental health care so you have that support system, it's not going to just make you better and those great versions of yourselves, but you're going to be models to everybody else in terms of how we should be to one another.
Nicki, you've always been such a fierce advocate for teens. It's just great to hear your voice around that. I wanted to ask, in what ways do you feel like teens are misunderstood these days?
I think the idea around the digital world. So when I get upset with Ruthie or Kate that they're on their phone for too long or get worried about it, and I think we are in a new age, the digital age, and it is incumbent on us as the adults in the world to learn that we are in a new paradigm and to adjust accordingly.
Right.
And I think we've been very quick to judge and be scared by it, right? There's a fear-based reaction to it. Yet the reality is that this is a new world, whether we like it or not. And so us trying to understand, okay, just like everything else, you're in a new paradigm. How do we maneuver to be our best selves so that we can support our teens? And I think our lack of knowledge, comfort, familiarity in the digital age, all of those things has lent itself to us being limited at times to showing that understanding that they deserve.
What have you learned from being a mom of teens?
So there's no doubt it's been the greatest love and joy and job of my life and my greatest accomplishment. It's very humbling because what happens is that you realize that how imperfect, how we're just human beings at the end of the day. So when I talked earlier about that false self or the public self, you have to look inward and say, I have these vulnerabilities. I'm not a perfect parent. I was a good enough parent today. And you better believe every night I think about what could I have done better? There is something really special about the fact that you get to see yourself in all these imperfect ways as a parent and have that self-love or that compassion for yourself that honestly we all needed and we've needed our whole lives. But as parents, if you do it right and if you allow yourself, you can really develop that because your self-confidence isn't there every day. So there's got to be a level of empathy.
I love that.
So much of the news coverage nowadays is focused on the negative impacts of social media on teens. But do you think there's also some positive aspects of social media?
I do. People experience connection in a lot of different ways, and we get support in a lot of different ways, a lot of flavors, a lot of shapes and sizes. And I think that there is negativity in social media, and there's a lot of work to be done for us to make it safer and better and all of the things you know, Hazuri, so well. It serves a purpose of, I've seen connection. I've seen people that have had a lot of loneliness. I've had teens that struggle socially, feel like there's more of a comfort or even some self-esteem related to communication, et cetera, through social media. So I think there's a way that it builds connections and builds relationships as well. I don't think anything is, in terms of social media, can you say, I think it's too simplistic to say, oh, it's all bad. I think there are pieces you can grab from it that actually have been helpful and useful for teens.
What kind of content do you like to watch on TikTok? Are you on funny pet TikTok or dance challenge TikTok, book talk? What makes you laugh or just get the feels? And what do you love about TikTok and why do you think it resonates with teens so much?
Well, my TikTok experience is with my kids making me do them with them. And they're not laughing with me, Hazuri. They're laughing at me. So what happens most of the time with TikTok is that they get me to do these funny dances. I am a terrible dancer. I should have used that as one of my quirks earlier. But I will tell you it works. One, it allows me to be silly. And like I said earlier, I'm more of a serious. So for me to play a little bit, to be silly, to know I'm not good at this, but I'm doing it anyway and I'm okay with it and having fun with my girls. So really a lot of it is videos regardless of what it's about. But most of it's the dance videos. You know, they have me kind of plays for their entertainment value for sure.
I can't wait to see it. Exactly. Nicki, where would you like BeMe to be a year or two from now? What's your vision for the company, for the teen community, for the behavioral health field as a whole? Essentially, how will you know that we've been successful in achieving what we set out to do?
You're assuming I've got all the answers. Okay. So I want to be known. I will know we were successful in a couple years if a few things happen. So one is that we're shown to be a brave and courageous company the way the teens are holding us to. So Hazuri and all the teen advisory members can say they're showing that courage. They really want to make that exponential difference in the lives of teens. And so for me, one of the gut checks is that, are we really that brave brand that's saying this means so much to us that no matter how many times we get knocked down, we're standing up. No matter how many mistakes we make, we're going to find a path because this is so important. We've got to transform the care. I think the next part of it is the teen advisory board growing. That idea that right now we're 30 plus, but success would mean a lot more teens really tapping into their talents and their strengths and their honesty, the candor I love, so that we can really say we've got a thriving teen advisory board that's in lockstep. And Hazuri and I could be standing there and people say we are side by side every step of the way. And that is true and authentic. That part is really important. I think to continue to have this team that has such a shared purpose and is so motivated about what can be, will be successful. The final thing I would say is going to be how we are to the outside world. So partnerships and relationships are everything to me. So how I see success is that there are stakeholders all over the world that say they're really wanting to work with us as part of the behavioral health ecosystem. So we're going to be a small part, but my hope is that we gain that relationships with so many to come together where we're accelerating the field as a force, because behavioral health care needs so much more than BeMe. But if we position ourselves as the partner that we really want to be and that we come together in that way, I think the success would be incredible. And then the final thing I would say is we'd know we're successful because Hazuri and everybody else will say, this platform is working because I'm feeling better. I'm feeling more supported. I'm gaining something from this platform. And so it's hopefully a part of a lot of lives, and people are really feeling like that best and greatest version of themselves that we're talking about, that they're moving towards. They might not be to it yet, but they're moving towards it. It's all about becoming.
I love that. That's what we're all working towards, right? Just kind of seeing that end outcome, which is that teens feel better. Yeah, feel like they can be themselves.
Yeah. And now for some hard-hitting questions. First, is it pronounced GIF or GIT? And
Thank you for asking somebody that.
I know we're engaged.
Okay, I still have no idea.
Yeah,
That's very funny. So I know that the answer on the test that's correct is GIF because Derek told me so. But I did read articles that could be GIF, but I have been so made fun of that GIF is my final answer.
I just avoid saying the word.
Yeah, it's easier to just write it out somewhere and let everyone figure it out.
Just text it.
Exactly. And our second question is, what is your favorite emoji?
So my favorite emoji is the monkey that covers its eyes. I love when Neha does this other emoji where it's the girl with her hands up, like, I don't know.
A little shrug.
Little shrug is my favorite that I received from her. But the one that really captures, because as you can imagine, Hazuri, I make a few mistakes each day. And so I love the one where I put the monkey with the eyes over the face, like, oh my God, that's my favorite.
You do use that a lot. Before we end, what advice would you give our teen listeners today? Both advice in general and then advice specific to their mental health.
I would tell you that one, to give yourself a break, to try to show the compassion towards yourself that you show everybody else. You are the most empathic people, like I said, that stand for things, that brave beyond what any of our generation ever was. So if you could turn that inward and give yourself a little bit of what you guys stand up for other people, I would love nothing more, because really that happiness that you deserve and should be owed to yourself for that. So my biggest advice and advice that I wish I had to my own teen self would be that the focus on, sure, we're not perfect. Sure, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to be rejected. We're going to be disappointed. We're going to be upset. We're going to be all of those things. That's life, but it doesn't define you. And you are incredible people. And to be striving to be that best version of yourself, not only should you strive for it, but you so deserve it. So get that Wonder Woman pose and say to yourself that you are that great.
So much, Dr. Nicki, for sharing all of this with us today. It's so great to hear directly from the leader of this amazing company.
Thank you, Nicki, for taking the time. Until next time, this is Dr. Neha Chaudhary reminding you to keep being you.